Okay, so the wall's up. Jerusalem has its defenses back after, well, decades. The gates are hung. It feels like a huge win.
It absolutely was a monumental task completed.
But what happens literally the day after? The building stops. What's next? That's what we're digging into today, looking at Nehemiah chapter 7.
Exactly. Because, a city isn't just walls, it's people. And chapter 7 immediately pivots from construction to, well, organization, community.
So right away, what's the first move according to the text?
First thing, appointing people. Nehemiah gets the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites set up in their roles.
The essential personnel. Gatekeepers for security, obviously.
Right, and the singers and Levites for, the temple worship and community life, which was so central.
Kind of the operational skeleton of the city.
Precisely. You need the basic functions running: security, worship, community structure.
And then Nehemiah picks leaders for Jerusalem itself. His brother Hanani and this other guy, Hananiah.
Yeah, Hananiah, the commander of the citadel. And the text gives this really interesting description of him.
It does, doesn't it? It's not just his job title.
No, it says he was a man of integrity, and crucially, someone who feared God more than most men do.
That detail seems really significant. Why flag that?
Well, it tells you everything about the values they were trying to rebuild with. In this vulnerable post-exile situation, trustworthiness, real integrity, and deep faith weren't just nice-to-haves for leaders.
They were essential.
Yeah.
Especially for someone in charge of the fortress, right?
Absolutely critical. Character first. And then we see more practical stuff, like the rules for the gates.
Yeah, really specific instructions, not just open 9 to 5.
No. The gates stay shut until the sun is hot. Probably means well after dawn. When things are clearly visible, guards are fully alert.
Makes sense.
And they had to be shut and barred while the gatekeepers were still on duty. Proper handover, no gaps.
Very thorough. And it wasn't just the official gatekeepers doing guard duty.
Right. They appointed residents too. Some had set posts. Others were assigned guard duty near their own homes.
So like a neighborhood watch system built in?
Kind of, yeah. Security becomes everyone's responsibility. Shared effort.
Okay, so the wall's done, leaders are chosen for their character, strict gate protocols are in place.
It sounds like progress.
It is progress, definitely. But then the text hits us with the big but.
Ah, yes. The core problem.
The city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt.
That line just lands with a thud, doesn't it? You've got this giant secure perimeter.
Around mostly ruins and empty space. It's a shell, a massive, fortified but largely empty shell.
So the real challenge wasn't just building the wall, it was filling the city, making it livable again.
Exactly. That sets up the next big move: repopulation, resettlement.
Which leads Nehemiah to what? What's the catalyst here?
The text says, "My God put it into my heart." That's the impetus.
Divine inspiration for administration.
Or census, basically. He decides to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families.
Okay, a divinely prompted registration. And the goal wasn't just a head count of who was there right then. No, it was more specific. It was to find the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return from Babylon.
Tracking down the original pioneers, the first wave back.
Exactly. It's about establishing lineage, who belonged to that foundational group that came back initially. It connects the present effort back to the very beginning of the return.
So it's about legitimacy, historical roots?
Very much so. And apparently he finds an existing record.
Right. It says he found this genealogical record. He didn't have to create it from scratch.
Seems like it. A list of the people of the province who came up from the captivity. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town. And it names the leaders of that first return: Zerubbabel, Jeshua.
Nehemiah himself is even listed there, interestingly enough, from that earlier group.
Yes, indicating his connection to that initial return, even though his main work comes later. It's a foundational document for this rebuilding phase.
And this list, it's incredibly structured. It's not just one long list of names.
No, it's broken down very deliberately. You have the main group, the men of Israel, listed by their ancestral families.
Right.
Then separate sections for the priests, the Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers.
The specialists.
Right. And then even the temple servants and the descendants of Solomon's servants. It reflects their whole social and religious structure.
Looking at the numbers for the men of Israel families gives a sense of scale. Parish, 2,172. Pahath Moab, 2,818.
Huge family clans forming the bulk of the returnees.
Elam, 1,254. And the biggest one mentioned is Seneh, with 3,830 people.
These large family networks were clearly the backbone of the returning population.
Then you get to the priests, also listed by family, but the numbers are, well, still large but distinct. Jediah, 973, Immer, 1,052.
Parshur, 1,247. Harim, 1,017. Still significant numbers because you needed a functioning priesthood and lineage was absolutely key for them.
Right. But then compare that to the Levites, only 74 listed in this group.
Yeah, much smaller. And the singers, 148. The gatekeepers, 138.
So far fewer people in these specialized service roles compared to the general population or even the priests.
It highlights that these were specific, maybe hereditary roles, requiring smaller numbers compared to the broad family groups settling the land. Essential, but distinct functions.
The list even includes the temple servants and descendants of Solomon's servants, Nethinim, and so on.
Right, groups dedicated to the temple and perhaps older state functions. Combined, they're listed as 392 people. It shows the complexity, the different layers of society they were trying to reestablish.
But then there's a really interesting section about people who came back, but, well, there was a problem.
Yeah, the issue of uncertain identity, people returning from places like Tel Melah, Tel Harsha.
But they couldn't prove their Israelite ancestry.
Exactly. The text says they could not show that their families were descended from Israel. About 642 people in that situation. Descendants of Deliah, Tobiah, Nekoda.
So they're part of the return. They came from the exile locations, but the paperwork, the family records weren't there.
The genealogical proof was missing. And this was a huge deal, especially for anyone claiming priestly status.
Ah, yes. The priests who couldn't find their records. Hobiah, Hakos, Barzillai.
They searched, the text says, but could not find them.
And the consequence? Pretty severe.
Absolutely. They were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. Period. No wiggle room there.
Wow. Just like that. Your whole role, your standing, gone because the records are lost.
It underscores how vital lineage was. It wasn't just about social standing. It was about ritual purity, fitness for sacred duty. Your identity was your qualification in many ways.
And the governor Nehemiah makes a specific ruling about that.
He does. They weren't allowed to eat any of the most sacred food, the portions reserved for priests, until there should be a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim.
The Urim and Thummim. That's pulling out the high priestly oracle, isn't it?
Yeah.
To sort out a records issue.
It shows this wasn't seen as just an administrative problem. It was a question of sacred status, of who truly belonged in that consecrated role. It needed potentially a direct divine clarification.
So the ultimate authority rests with God's guidance, mediated through this ancient practice. It elevates the whole issue beyond just bureaucracy.
Definitely. It shows how intertwined their administration, genealogy, and theology were.
Okay, so after all these categories, the people with clear lineage, the ones without, the priests facing issues, we get the grand totals from the census.
Right. The whole company, presumably the core Israelite group, numbered 42,360.
A significant number, the verified population.
But not the total population returning. You also had 7,337 male and female servants.
Okay, so add another 7,000 plus people.
And 245 male and female singers, listed separately from the Levitical singers, maybe professional musicians.
So the actual number of people on the ground was closer to 50,000.
Pushing towards that, yeah. A major resettlement effort.
And they didn't just count people. The list includes animals.
I love that detail. It's so practical. 736 horses, 245 mules.
Camels are mentioned, no number though. And then thousands of donkeys.
A whopping 6,720 donkeys. Think about what that means.
Transport, labor, agriculture.
Exactly. These aren't just stats. They represent the working capital of this new community. The sheer logistics involved in moving and sustaining that many animals, let alone the people. It paints a picture of a community equipped or trying to equip itself for survival and rebuilding.
It really grounds the whole thing in practical reality.
Right.
You need donkeys to rebuild a city.
You really do. And you also need resources. Which brings us to the contributions.
Ah, the fundraising part, also meticulously recorded.
Very much so. It starts with the governor, Nehemiah himself. He puts in 1,000 gold drachmas, 50 bowls, probably for temple use, and 530 priestly garments.
Leading from the front, setting an example with a pretty hefty personal donation.
Absolutely. But then you see the broader community chipping in. The heads of families give 20,000 gold drachmas and 2,200 minas of silver.
20,000 gold drachmas, that's a lot.
It's a huge amount. And then the rest of the people, the general populace, contribute another 20,000 gold drachmas, plus 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 more priestly garments.
So in total, like 41,000 gold drachmas over 4,000 minas of silver. I mean, just trying to imagine the value back then, it's staggering.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the level of commitment across the community. This wasn't just Nehemiah's project. Everyone was invested, literally. They were pouring their wealth into this treasury for the work.
It shows incredible shared purpose and sacrifice.
Without a doubt. And the chapter kind of wraps up by stating that everyone, priests, Levites, gatekeepers, singers, temple servants, the general population settled in their assigned towns.
Right. It says, when the seventh month came and the Israelites had settled in their towns, it feels like a closing statement for this phase.
It is. The wall is built, the people are identified and registered, the resources are gathered, and now they're actually in their places across the land ready for the next stage. That meticulous administrative work of Chapter 7 was the essential bridge.
So looking back at this deep dive into Chapter 7, it really highlights that shift, doesn't it? From the physical wall to the human infrastructure.
Yeah, building the community within the walls. And that involved defining who belonged, where they fit, based on lineage and role.
The incredible focus on lists, on identity, even dealing with the difficult cases of uncertain ancestry.
And the sheer scale of the resources they managed to pull together. It paints this picture of a society trying to meticulously reconstruct itself based on its history and its faith.
It really drives home that rebuilding is so much more than bricks and mortar. It's about order, identity, shared commitment.
Absolutely. History, organization, resources, all coming together.
There's this interesting tension throughout the chapter, isn't there? You have this grand vision, a restored Jerusalem, the center of their world rebuilt.
A huge symbolic goal.
But achieving it depends on these incredibly detailed, almost mundane lists, counting people, counting donkeys, recording every gold drachma.
The big dream built on tiny details.
Yeah. What does that mix, the grand vision needing the granular, painstaking work? Tell us, maybe, about any big project, any significant change we try to make. It makes you think about the connection between our aspirations and the sometimes tedious steps needed to actually get there.
From the divine inspiration for a census right down to counting the last donkey, it's quite a journey.